All right, so live. Okay, so good evening to everyone. My name is Amanda. I'm the chair of São Carlos PS, I3IPS chapter. I'll be your host for today, and our presentation is going to be about the role of smart grid in facilitating the integration of renewables. It's going to be given by Professor Saifur Rahman, who is the founding director of the Advanced Research Institute at Virginia Tech in the USA, where he is a professor of electrical and computer engineering, as well as a distinguished lecturer for the I3I Power and Energy Society. Professor Rahman, would you like to speak a few words?
Yes, thank you very much, Amanda, and everybody in the audience. I am very happy to be able to come before you today and talk about my research, which I have been doing for multiple years now. And then I would have, hopefully at the end, some time for questions and answers.
Okay. We would like to thank Professor Rodrigo Ramos for being the one responsible for connecting us to Professor Rahman. Professor Ramos is a professor at the University of São Paulo at the Department of Electrical Engineering, and he's also our chapter's advisor. So, Professor Ramos, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, thank you, Amanda. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Rahman for accepting our invitation to give this webinar to us. What people who are attending this webinar will be able to hear is from one of the most renowned specialists in smart grids and renewables in the world. So it's a unique opportunity. So thank you, Professor Rahman. And also, I would just like to say a few words on how timely this presentation is. Because first of all, the integration of renewables is not just an interest from Brazil. It's a worldwide interest. I've talked in a past event about the Global Power Systems Transformation Consortium. So you can see that there's interest in integration of renewables all around the world. But particularly for Brazil, we have a very clean energy matrix. But we are now facing an energy shortage. And why is this happening? Exactly because we rely on only one clean source of energy, which is large hydropower. So the integration of other types of renewables, the ones that Professor Rahman will talk to us about, is very timely, very interesting, and will probably shape the future of your profession if you're a student, or is probably already impacting your profession if you are a practitioner or a researcher. So Amanda, thank you for the introduction. Thank you, Professor Rahman, again, and I take it back to you.
So we'll be opening a little while at the end of the webinar for questions. So they can be made both by the call for the ones who are in here or by chat and live. So Professor Rahman, you can please go ahead.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody in the audience. My pleasure to come before you to talk about three things here: smart grid, renewables, and integration. I'll talk about all of those as I go forward. At the bottom part of the screen is my website, srahman.org. I will post this slide deck also tonight on my website. So those of you who are interested to see what other topics I speak about will find it useful, I hope. Let's move on then. We are engineers, so we are always facing this question. If something new comes up, people say, wow, what is it? How do you define it?
My
So
apologies for interrupting. Is your camera off?
no, my camera is, I don't know why the camera is not showing.
Oh. Oh, all right. Sorry for interrupting.
Is I can see the green light has gone off. I wonder why. So let me do this again. This is interesting. It was on before. I could see you. Hold on a second. It got turned off somehow. Okay, let me go back to full screen. 1 second.
Yes.
Is the full screen visible now?
Yes, everything's all right.
Very good, thank you. So again, we are talking about smart grid. We have to define it. Here's the definition. Smart grid is a concept with many elements where monitoring and control of each element in the chain of generation, transmission, distribution, and end use allow electricity delivery to be efficient. Many things happening here. As you see here, I'm talking about a concept. That means smart grid is never final. You cannot say, I'm done. I've built a smart grid. You can never finish it. So many things can happen in between. And I'll explain that as I go forward with my talk this evening. So let's talk about a grid. The word grid means a network. This is for us transmission or electric power grid network. If you want to focus on this grid, it is already very smart. It has PMU, electronics, fax devices. So when I talk about smart grid, I'm not talking about the power grid. It's already smart. Talking about the rest of the network, distribution, load, local supply. That's what the problem is. And that's where, in fact, the renewables will come in. Renewables will not come in 1,000 megawatt batches. They come in megawatt, kilowatt batches. That's what they are focusing on, distribution network. So what is the motivation behind a smart grid? We want to make the grid smarter, safer, reliable, and more cost-effective using advanced sensors, communication technologies, and distributed computing. Notice I did not say low cost, I said cost effective. In fact, smart grid is very expensive, but can do many things for you, which allow you to integrate renewables without any problems. This is the difference. It is not cheap, but it is cost effective. I'll explain to you what I mean by cost effective with this slide. Look at this. This is, to me, simple way to explain the difference between a normal grid and a smart grid. Like a normal black and white rotary dial phone, which none of you have seen this, I guess, in your life. Maybe maybe Ramos has seen it. But anyway, that is the phone we used for many years from the beginning. That phone cost about $15 or so, maybe less than $15 US, rotary dial phone. On the right-hand side is a smartphone, iPhone. iPhone 12 costs about $1,200. If you want to make only a phone call, audio call, in fact, the black and white phone has a better audio quality than the smartphone. In fact, that's true. Why should you spend 100 times more money to make a phone call? You don't. Why spend that much money? Not because of the phone only. It's your camera, Facebook, WhatsApp, your email, your database, your electronic mail, all of that. Because this smartphone is giving you so many other features, you don't mind spending that much money. That is why I say smartphone is cost effective. However, if we want to focus only on delivering power from a power plant to the end user, you don't need smart grid. It's fine. Problem happens when you inject renewables inject different pricing mechanism, inject the peak pricing, then you need other features for system to be cost effective and efficient. That's the difference. Okay, move on. So what then are the starting and end points of a smart grid? Well, it starts at a power plant, obviously, transmission network, distribution system, local businesses, homes, buildings, and your end use appliances. In fact, if the power company scans my smart meter every 10 seconds, they can tell what devices, appliances are running in my house, because every device has a signature, how much power comes in, how long the power stays. For example, you talk about a hair dryer, stays on for a minute. Talk about an electric fan, stays for much longer. Talk about electric heat, stays for hours. So this is the full scale. So I say the smart grid starts at the generator and ends at the refrigerator. That is a risky business, because if you allow the power company to figure out when you open your refrigerator door how much food you have, it's a privacy issue. So that we'll come back to that later on if you want to go into deeper discussion on that topic. So then the question is, what makes the smart grid smart grid? What are the building blocks? And the top of the pyramid is technology. We need smart meters, smart switches, smart sensors, smart devices to make it happen. Those are all available today. Marketplace. Brazil has it, US has it, Europe has it, is there. Second is standards. If and when you want to make an application, a device using many vendors, like smart meter, it's made by people in China, US, Switzerland, UK, Germany, Japan, many of those. We have to make sure a Brazilian power company, Sapel, if they want to buy electric smart meters, they can buy from anybody who sells a quality product. But all those meters must be manufactured based on some standards. That work is ongoing and pretty much more or less done for smart meters. We have standards for smart meters. That's done. Second is rates and regulations. Smart meter, smart grid can take advantage of different pricing. For example, in Virginia where I live, the power is very expensive between 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. on a hot summer day. Because that's everybody's running their air conditioners, everything else, power gets tight. So what they can do, they can change the price of electricity from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. higher than normal to discourage people using more than they have to. So that is possible with a smart meter, which can broadcast the higher price to the home user and take action. That work is ongoing, not done at all in the US and no other country. Finally, the lowest element in this pyramid is the consumer awareness and education. Public has to know the benefit of smart grid. For example, we just said pricing mechanism. If they don't know that, they are not willing to pay for this smart meter. Why is that important? A normal meter in the US costs under $30, $30 to $50 to install it. Done. Installed on in operation. Smart meter costs about $200 plus. $200 plus. Not the meter only. The telecom network that goes with it to get data back and forth is pretty expensive. So why should a homeowner be willing to pay $200 for a smart meter if they do not know what the benefit this meter provides? That's important. That's what I mean by consumer awareness and education. Keep that in mind as we go forward. Now, how is the grid evolving today? Evolution of the grid. Before smart grid, we have the top third of my screen. Before smart grid, one-way power flow, simple interactions is common. You know this. Power plant, step-up transformer, long-distance transmission line, neighborhood step-down transformer, distribution line, and a home and building. That's going on for 100 plus years now. What is new is the lower half of my screen, See the blue dotted lines? That's not power line, it's the communication network. Because as I said, my house has to know if the price of electricity is going to be high at 3 o'clock on a summer afternoon. How do I know this? There must be a telecom network of some kind to give me that information. Similarly, I have in this picture battery storage, solar panel, wind turbines, electric vehicles, all of those. All of those are interconnected using some communication line so that they are smart in the sense they can react to changing conditions. Example, for my house, a smart meter, how does it work? From my house, the smart meter transmits information using mesh microwave network, microwave, that's provided by the power company. That is an output from the meter. That information, microwave data, is collected from 100 or so homes into a data concentrator that is sitting in some pole somewhere nearby. So 100 homes are sending data to the data concentrator. Their data concentrator is connected to the substation using GPRS mobile phone network. So what the power company has done, they have provided the mesh network themselves, but they are borrowing or renting space in the mobile phone network bandwidth to transmit information from the data concentrator to the substation. Done. From substation to their control center, they have their own fiber optic network. That's how the data goes all the way to the control center. So the point is you need communication network. That's how they get data from me when they send an information, turn the voltage, change the voltage, for example, for some control purposes. They'll send the signal from control center. It'll come to the substation using their fiber optic line. Substation, data comes to the data concentrator using the mobile phone network. And from that point is a mesh network, get the data to my meter. That's how it's set up today in my case. Now, so let's look at the breakdown. This is my way of explaining how the smart grid works. This is what I believe will happen going forward. I call it intelligent, interconnected microgrids. That interconnected, intelligent means they can talk to each other and take action based on the surrounding conditions. If you focus on the top square, the small one on the top, the 4 homes, each has rooftop solar. One has an electric vehicle, the green car on the upper right-hand side. But all these homes are interconnected using telecom network. It's like a modem picture in the middle. That is important. Yes, power lines are there. The orange red line at the power line, but the telecom is there. On the right-hand side, another microgrid, which has same kind of setup, but a battery bank in the middle, lower right. In the middle is a bigger microgrid, which has connections to other microgrids. At the same time, this is linked, the bigger microgrid linked to the wind park on the lower left-hand side. On the lower right-hand side, connected to the power station using a transformer. And at the bottom, connected to another microgrid with battery storage. No microgrid is fully independent all the time. It's very expensive to make all microgrid fully independent, meaning enough supply all the time. They depend on other microgrids to supply power when they need it and provide some backup capability. So that's what I believe will happen as time progresses. We have storage, battery storage, electric vehicle, network, power network, solar panels, wind turbines, and the like. Of course, Brazil has a lot of hydro, which I'm assuming is part of the high voltage transmission network. This is my forecast. Now, summarizing what I just said, now you realize I'm talking about merging power flow with information flow. This is new. We must have integrated communications. Look at this picture. This is what we call electric power infrastructure. We know this. This is standard practice. Upper left-hand side, central generating station, step-up transformer, Power goes to long distance transmission lines, come back to local distribution substations, voltage goes down. Some substations may have a gas turbine for peak load purposes. Happens in the US, in fact. Then you got other substations. Some may have a micro turbine. Lower left hand side is a group of homes with rooftop solar and batteries. It's possible. At the bottom middle, I have an industrial building which may have cogeneration, meaning it can have its own generation for peak load. Possible. On the lower right-hand side, a commercial building, could be a data center, has a flywheel for local supply. This is the big deal today. Also, there could be a fuel cell in a building to provide backup power. This is our electric power infrastructure. On top of that, I will superimpose what I call information infrastructure. That is new. The red lines you can see are pointing up and down, left and right. That means they provide two-way communication. In fact, when you put solar in the distribution network, I am sending power from the local supply to the grid. That's also two-way. That's a challenge. Anyway, my point is we have to have two-way communication between everybody in the network, which is the red line setup you can see. Fine. So that's the smart grid part. Let's come back now to the renewable energy or intermittent generation. 2-3 kinds. One is the wind turbine. Here you see offshore wind. On the upper right-hand side is from Japan, rooftop solar, available in the US quite a bit. Many countries have rooftop solar now. Europe, pretty big, in fact. Then at the bottom, I have electric vehicle. The electric vehicle can be not only a load, can be a source. We talk about V2G, vehicle to grid. So you have a Tesla car or any big battery, 60, 70 kilowatt hour storage. You came home from office, you still have 60% left in the battery. So peak time in the evening, in the summertime in the US, power is more expensive. Rather than buying power from the power grid, at least partially, you can turn your car as a battery and send power back to the grid so you can save power purchase price by not buying as much from the power company. So I'm showing those three as a possible source of electricity, local source. Now, so these are also known as distributed generation. We know wind and solar is there, but they're intermittent. No guarantee that you'll have wind and solar all the time when you need it. No guarantees. They're there most of the time. Hydro is more reliable, but it is space limited. You can have hydro in Sao Paulo, for example. You have to go Itaipu or some farther distance to get hydro power found out. Therefore, all these resources, your wind, solar, hydro, even though they're free resource, but not always and not everywhere available. That's my challenge. Okay. Let's talk about these, especially wind and solar, primarily hydro, you know very well. I would not spend much time on that. So wind energy, I'm going to give you some data that I have from the US in this case. This is Bonneville Power Administration, Northwestern US, Bonneville Power, Northwest, Oregon, Washington states. I'm giving you data, a typical day data for demand and wind output. Blue is the demand, red is the wind output. This is a January data, just sample year 2013. Typical day in January, winter time, I have dual peaks, standard in the US, because of two heating times, morning and evening heat. Dual peak, fine. Then I see this typical day in northwestern US, wind power output looks like this. Low at night, slowly picks up speed, high about 2-3 p.m. in the afternoon, then begins to drop. That means the wind power output shape does not match with the demand shape. That's not very helpful. The most of the wind you see is when the demand is low. That is a challenge we need to deal with. This is winter time. Let's look at springtime. Same area, northwestern US, Bonneville Power Administration. Again, the load is dual peak because in March timeframe or April timeframe, still some heating going on, dual peak, no problem. But peak is less than before. Again, look at the wind output for a typical day. It is high early morning and then keeps on dropping all day. Even though you see some similarity or matching between the wind output and the morning peak, by the time the evening peak shows up, wind is low. Not a very helpful situation. Let's look at summertime. Summertime primarily forcing air conditioning use. So the demand is pretty flat, very flat peak, beginning from about 10 in the morning till about 7, 8 in the evening. Not dual peak anymore. Fine. Look at the wind output in July. Very low all day. In fact, and the peak happens for demand about 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock is a peak. Wind is the lowest of the day. And the wind picks up in the evening later on. Doesn't help. July. Let's look at fall, October. Same Bonneville Power Administration. Typical day in October. Dual peak is back because of the heating load is now starting to show up. Different example now. You see the wind is available most of the day from early morning till about 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock, then drops out. At least you got one peak covered by the wind output. Good, because this is the problem. It's not consistent. Let's look at a more detailed data for Texas. This came from a 100 megawatt wind farm in Texas. You see wind is fluctuating somewhat in the morning. At 5 o'clock or so, it dropped by almost a quarter in 1 minute. Then it stabilized low and then come back. If you have to depend on this wind farm as your primary source of electricity, you got into trouble, because that 25% drop, how do you manage it? You can say, well, put batteries. You can. Batteries are very expensive and not easily available always. That's one example. If you look at a different example, over 10 minutes, same wind farm, different day, of course. In about 10 minutes, I go from 90% to 30%. 130 megawatt in 10 minutes drop. Then picks up, stays up, then drops again, and so on and so forth. That is the challenge we have to deal with. That's my setup to explain how a smart grid can help. That's the idea. So that was wind. Now let's look at solar. This is my building where I work at Virginia Tech near Washington, D.C. Clear sunny day, no problem, get solar output is fine. But we also have snow here. Against a clear winter day, but it snowed the night before. Even the day is clear, full sunshine, my solar output is 0 because it's snow covered. What do I do with it? That's my challenge. Well, look at the data. 7-day solar PV output for my rooftop solar unit, pretty good if it is sunny. Just 6 kilowatt system, I'm getting pretty close, 5.5 kilowatt most of the days, sunny days. That's a 7-day solar. If I look at, in the same case, another week, which is not so sunny, mostly cloudy or intermittent, I never get 6 kilowatt anymore. 5 kilowatt only once. 3 kilowatt, 2 kilowatt, all that. Again, that's my challenge. If this is the load, this is the supply they have to live with, what do I do? We'll come back to that. Let's look at one day with a situation with cloud moving in and out. You see the spikes, mainly down. Clouds move in for a minute or two, 5 minutes maybe. Then the output goes down, and then clouds move away, output is back. This is an example of where battery can help, but battery is not essential. If I could control my load using a smart building setup, when the demand is normal, but solar supply is going to be low, I have a 2-minute forecast, I can control some lights, some air conditioners, some ventilation fans, maybe the other appliance in the building, so that when the supply drops for a short time, I can drop my load as well and match them. That's what I mean by smart building. Talk about that. That is a clear day, cloud moving. This is a cloudy day, and sun is coming up in and out. Again, output is 2,000 watt or 2 kilowatts or so. Those are the challenges. Now, what are the solutions? Battery is a possibility, of course. We talked about this already. Battery can react in a matter of seconds. So if things change quickly, battery can take care of it. Other two examples are lower left-hand side, pumped storage hydro. As opposed to your big hydro, pumped storage hydro is more peak load driven opportunity. During off-peak hours, will pump water in this picture here to upper reservoir in the same mountain range, a hill station. During the peak hours, I will let the water come down and turn the generator. The same equipment which was used as a pump to pump water up will be used now as a generator to produce power with the water coming down. That's pump storage. There is a 2-3 hour lead time difference between pumping and generating because so much water has to go and then come back down. That's not impact in a second by second situation. Cannot do that. Our situation. On the lower right hand side is my compressed air storage example. What is that? During off peak hours, I have a motor, see the picture here, which can drive a compressor, compress the air in the atmosphere, and send that compressed air to a salt mine or a hole in the ground, which can store compressed air without leaking. During the peaking time of the day, that compressed air will be allowed to come back out from the stored salt cavern and help drive a gas turbine. Why is that important? Gas turbine, you may know, requires compressed air to fire. Before a turbine goes into operation, they'll compress the air and throw that into the chamber to fire. That means during peaking hour, you're spending electricity first to compress the air and then use the turbine. In my case here, I have the air compressed for you ready, pre-compressed. So you're not spending electricity during peak hours to compress the air. That's the advantage. It can be a few minutes of turnaround time. Those are the three possibilities we are dealing with. Now you can see what's the opportunity. Smart versus not so smart load control. Let me take a minute. This is a big issue in the US. What is happening in the US because of the hot summer afternoon, the power company provides some cash incentive for homeowners to allow the power company to turn their AC off during hot summer afternoon, turn the AC off for 15 minutes and half an hour so they can avoid the peaking demand. That's done. Turn it off. That is what I mean by not so smart control. Because if my AC is off when it's hot outside, I don't like it, right? I'm feeling hot inside. Rather than turning the AC off in a smart grid network, I would change the temperature setting in the thermostat. Maybe it was 22, make it 24, 25. The AC will run less, not off. The room will not be as much hot as the case without the AC running. That's one example. Similarly, we talk about battery. Yes, you can buy all the batteries in the world you want and keep full backup. You can do that, but that gets very expensive and space is an issue. If I can predict for short time, lead time, what my load is going to do, I can then play with that load variation when my rooftop solar fluctuation is causing problems. That's what I mean by size the storage to take advantage of demand dynamics. Now I'm saying not zero storage. Storage is there, but not as much because I can manage some of the fluctuations using the demand control. So again, renewable can be controlled using the smart inverters. Now, how can the smart grid help? I say it helps to integrate intermittent sources into power grid. How does it work? Look at this bottom part of my screen. Short-term load control for a large number of end-use devices through demand response makes it possible to get quick relief to match fluctuations in generation. Take an example, let's say Sao Paulo University campus. Many buildings are there. Every building is a smart building. You can change the thermostat setting, change the light intensity, turn some fan off. The whole campus has so many buildings, you can save few megawatts for a minute or two, few megawatts. In that case, when your wind and solar are fluctuating, you don't need to depend on all the battery backup for the situation where the wind and solar is out or not available for a few minutes. That's what I mean by demand response opportunity to make it happen. Okay, what is demand response? It is a customer action to control load to meet a certain target. That's a good idea here. What do you mean by certain target? If I could, I can have done that myself. I can forecast the PV output for the next 2 minutes with less than 2% error, less than 2% error. So as the system works, smart network, I'm looking at the PV output in real time. I can see between 102 and 104, PV will be low. What I'll do, I'll send signals to all these buildings, raise the temperature setting in the thermostats, it's a hot day, of course, and dim some lights. If you came to my lab, I can show you, I can dim the light in a lab by 20%. You cannot tell the difference. You don't know I'm doing this. If you dim by 20%, you can save 12% electricity. That's how I talk about short-term demand control. That's demand response. Okay, now, so this is the new way of thinking. Historically, we said demand-driven supply. That means your demand is changing, supply changing to keep track of things. You have more demand in the afternoon, put more hydropower. It works. Now, I have solar and wind. The supply is not guaranteed. We just talked about, right? I call it supply-driven demand. If my supply is not under my control, what can I do? I can control demand now by changing the thermostat setting, changing the light intensity, turning fans off. We call it a new reality, supply-driven demand. That's smartness. That's how we want to make the system operate with a lot of renewables, intermittent renewables, solar, wind in the system. Rodrigo talked about that in the beginning introduction. As you more and more solar wind comes in, what do you do? This is my solution. Play with the load more than supply. We call this smart grid ecosystem. This is my ecosystem. Starts at the smart building, the yellow circle in the bottom of my screen. What is smart building? Intelligent building automation systems, lower right-hand side of my screen. Smart devices like smart thermostat, smart lighting control, productive users, and grid integration. What do you mean by productive users? If your building, depending partly on solar output or solar supply in the roof, and sunshine goes away for 10 minutes, you dim the lights, turn lights off. It doesn't work, right? Nobody can work if the lights are off. So to maintain the worker productivity, I must maintain the building environment unchanged. Same heating, cooling, same light, same everything. So this is what I mean by smart building can do that. If you have a campus like Sao Paulo University has many buildings. If all the buildings are smart buildings, you have a smart campus. You control more easily. Then you talk about smart city, right? Smart city, maybe Sao Paulo city is a smart city. Most, if not all, most buildings can be smart. Sorry, most buildings in all campuses can be smart so that the system at the city level can do more controls. And finally, smart grid. The whole power network is supplying Sao Paulo and many other cities. All the smart cities can be smart cities, as I defined already. We don't have a problem of incorporating a large number of intermittent sources at the distribution level to keep your system running. That's my solution. Now, that's it for me. Thank you here. Again, my email address is given, ieee.org, s.rahman. My website is again given to you in front of you. I'm in Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and of course, YouTube. And as some of you know, I'm running for IEEE president this year. Election will be held in August, September timeframe. With that, let me stop sharing the screen, Amanda, and you can do the Q&A.
All right, thank you so much, Professor. Does anyone in the room have a question? Okay, so we have a question from the YouTube chat. Guilherme asked if you could recommend any book or article about the subject at undergraduate level.
There are many books. I teach a class on this topic. I can use many different books. So I would suggest best thing would be to go to Google and say textbook on renewable energy. That's it. You get about 10 or 15 hits, read their table of content, and the one you like, you can buy that.
Amanda, can I have a follow up question because I think it is an important point, and thank you, Professor Rahman, again for pointing this out. One of the main, most important things about your talk is the fact that the very concept of smart grid involves integration of power transfer infrastructure with a communication infrastructure. So we already have in power system education some kind of division between power systems and power electronics. But this is fading because when we are talking about integrating renewables, and they are mostly asynchronous, we have to understand about power electronics as well. Now, the landscape is changing so fast that we already have to understand a bit about communications as well. So, how does the future of power systems impact power system education for the future engineers?
Very good question here, Rodrigo. I face this all the time in my lab. So when somebody comes to do PhD with me, they have power background. I take them a class in communications, networking, as well as cybersecurity. So they take those courses more than power courses. Power, we know power. So we know how, like I give my example, my house, how is the power smart meter work? No power here. It's a microwave mesh network, mobile phone network. You got your case with fiber optic network. How does this work? They have to understand this. Otherwise, they cannot do troubleshooting. That's important.
Thank
So
you.
I say to my friends, we in the power business provide the playground for communication, power electronics, computer people to play. And this is my sandbox. You play in my sandbox. And then you learn something from us. Okay, any other question, comments? So you have no idea, Amanda, how many people are looking at it, right? No idea in YouTube? You don't know.
I'm not sure right now. I
Yeah.
think it's around 40 people right now.
Okay.
Maybe they're a bit shy to ask in English.
I know exactly that's point. You can tell them to ask in Portuguese. They can translate for me. That's fine.
Let's see. Yeah, we're waiting for a bit. Meanwhile, we have a question from Guilherme. It's a different Guilherme. He asked if you have any projections of how smart grids are going to work in the next 5 to 10 years.
They have been deployed in the US at least, for almost 10, 12 years. But most deployment has happened in the smart meter field, smart meters first. Some have been doing smart controls now, and it's expensive, it's not cheap. So until and unless we find good reason to benefit from a smart grid, it will not be widely deployed. China has the most smart meter deployment in the world. They have like 400 million smart meters in operation. US may have under 100 million, for example. But they're also struggling with the same issue, what to do with this information, with the data. So answer is, it's slow. If you talk about research possibilities, a lot of things you can do to make the smart grid more practical, but it'll be a slow process. Yeah.
Right, so while I wait to check whether anyone has any questions. I would like to ask a personal question. You mentioned the use of microgrids. Are those microgrids the same ones described in literature, like the ones who are capable of working completely islanded for a while? Or are they obligatorily interconnected all the time?
Anytime we design microgrid, we cannot make it 100% self-sufficient. It gets very expensive. Never done that way. So they're always interconnected, always connected. Get power from the network. If the network fails, we have to do islanding, but then we must drop some loads, some non-essential loads, or bring a battery backup. So answer is microgrid, normal operation, interconnected, always interconnected. But they can drop off and keep the main load supplied, but not everything supplied.
Right. So Aline asked if you have any projection in Brazil specifically about the usage of smart grids.
No, I don't know Brazil as well. Maybe Rodrigo can answer that question. I do not know.
I can offer a perspective, and I'm going to use part of Professor Rahman's talk to show to you how we are dealing with the issue right now. So we're facing an energy shortage, and this is because of a very dry, not a very dry season, but a very dry period involving several years,
Okay.
which has put us in a condition of we are facing not only an energy shortage, but also a water shortage. So we cannot we cannot produce so much energy because we need to preserve the water in the reservoirs for other uses.
Right.
So we are, despite all the efforts, we are very reliant on large hydropower. So, and we have another problem, which is about consumer education.
Right.
So, what they're trying to do with this emergency situation is to raise the price. So, our tariff for energy is going to raise by more than 20% in the next month, just as a disincentive for users to rely on electricity. So this is the not so smart approach that Professor Rahman mentioned. The smart approach would be better planning and investment, as Professor Rahman puts, because the transition to smart to a truly smart grid is costly, but it's cost effective, as mentioned. And we will not be facing those energy shortages every 5 or 10 years that we have been facing. And there's another point, another important point. The fact that the demand is not responsive to price may make this price raise not very effective. So we may be faced with the problem that to cut load. So it will have to be an emergency measure. If the smart grid solution is implemented, then we're not forced to cut load, just to reduce it when we are not in peak hours. So that's the smart solution. It needs to be thought by the regulators and the policymakers, just because we cannot be facing shortages every 5 or 10 years like we have been doing for the last 2 decades. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's unfortunately our perspective.
I am just curious here, Ramos. Curious is, I was in Brazil last time 10 years ago, 2011 to be exact. At the time, there was a lot of talk about offshore wind, Rio and offshore wind. Has that happened and didn't happen?
Yes, but mostly in the shore of the northeast region of Brazil, where we have enough wind for that. It did not turn into reality near the big load centers, which are in the southwest. So São Paulo and Rio are in the southwest, southeast, and we do not have offshore wind power near the load centers. So although the system is integrated, the wind power injects power too far away from the load centers, which means that we have a trouble of transmission with environmental impact, with grid stability, and all those problems that a large grid has to deal with.
What's the distance?
Roughly 5,000 kilometers.
5,000?
5,000, yes.
Wow, that's big. That's big. Big difference. Okay.
Please, if someone has a more accurate information, so from I can give a better estimate.
That sounds very.
But that's roughly it.
No, that's a challenge. Yeah, that's a challenge, right? The wind energy has been successful in some countries, Germany, US, and China so far. They've built long transmission lines. Like Texas, the wind output is on the western part of Texas, demand is eastern part of Texas. It's not like you, few hundred miles, not few thousand miles, few hundred miles. That's helping. In Midwestern US, they have a line to Canada, 500 kV line, and that's working quite well. The wind, other issue is intermittency and reliability. When the wind slows down, what do? Brazil is a good case study. If wind slows down, you get hydro to back it up. Happening in Denmark and Norway today. Denmark, nighttime wind output more than the national demand for the whole country. Wind is more than the whole country's demand at night. They sell the power up to Norway, nighttime. During daytime, when demand is high in Denmark, they bring hydropower from Norway. Both parties benefit. One gets nighttime cheap power, and the Denmark people get less expensive hydropower. So those are national designs and plans. I'm sure people have thought about this, but I've seen that China, same thing. China, the wind is on the western side of the country, demand east part of the country. That's 3,000 kilometer distance, 3,000 kilometers. A lot of lines have been built. 1,000 kV DC transmission lines have been built.
Professor Rahman, just to correct my estimation, I overestimated. It's 3,000. I just Googled it, and it's 3,000.
Right. Still long distance.
Yeah. Still long distance. And just our interconnections are with Paraguay, Argentina, and Uruguay. So we are interconnected with the power systems of the countries in the south of Brazil, and our wind generation is on the other side, in the north, in the northeast. So we cannot effectively use this available power unless we produce incentives for this power to be connected, and we do not rely on large hydro so much.
Right. Well, that's a challenge, but we are all engineers. We can figure it out, I guess, over time, what we should do.
Yes. Amanda, any more questions?
Yeah, we have a question by Miguel. He asks if, in the smart grid context, is it possible to rank the importance of demand response, control of distributed generation, and other functions?
Yes. My solution, I want to give a smart solution. Rather than buying a lot of batteries, I will play with my load. As I said, I can dim the light in your room today by 20%. You can't tell the difference. We save 12% of demand. 12%, not bad. I can change the setting thermostat by 2 degrees plus. AC runs less, but you don't feel too hot. It works. Those are the, I say, smart control in a building to make the building more sensitive to changing supply situation. We don't cut loads, never cut loads. We just play with it. So again, you can go to Google, find out how to make a building smart building. I have another talk about smart buildings, IoT sensor smart buildings. Okay, good.
All right. We also have a question by Gabriel. He asked, how crucial is cybersecurity for the implementation of smart buildings, cities, and grids? And how is the sector preparing for this shift?
Yeah, anytime you do remote control, like with the smart building, remotely control, it's not remote, automated control. When I sense my rooftop solar going to go down by 2%, I can begin to dim some lights. But again, there's a risk of cyber crime because somebody can take over that network and turn lights off in the middle of the day. It's possible. I mean, you saw the pipeline was turned off in the US by cyber crime. So those are concerns, but there are solutions. We can, in my case, I have some hard-coded numbers. You cannot dim the light below 50%. It cannot possible. It's hard-coded. You cannot change the temperature by more than 5 degrees, hard-coded. Those are some solutions we can deal with on a case-by-case basis.
All right, I think that is about it. Those are all the questions we had. So I guess we're gonna finish it here. Thank you so much, Professor Rahman, for participating here. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Would you like to give any sort of closing statement?
No, I enjoyed the questions. And as somebody asked the question, what can they do to learn more? So I would suggest start with smart buildings. A lot of papers are published on smart buildings. Look at that. And in your own mind, create some scenarios, smart building, smart campus, smart city. And those could be project ideas that Professor Rodrigo and his colleagues can put for the students to make it happen. So that would be my parting comment.
All right.
Amanda, if you allow me, I would just like to reinforce that our thanks to Professor Rahman. Professor Rahman, as you could see, is an expert on the field. He was a past president. He is a past president of the PES Society, and he's running for IEEE president. So if you can also spread the word, if you like the talk, and you can also spread the word, what I encourage you to do is to go out there and vote if you can vote. If you cannot, spread the word that Professor Rahman can be the first PES past president that would be an IEEE president, and that would mean a lot for us power engineers. So thank you very much, Professor Rahman, once again.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you to you both. Thanks again to Professor Holmes as well for putting us in contact with Professor Rahman. So this event was organized by the student branches of the State University of São Paulo and the University of São Paulo. You can find both of our contacts in the chat. And you can also find Professor Rahman's website in the chat. So if you have any questions to us, you can ask us. And if you would like to know more about Professor Rahman's work, you can just look into his website. And thank you to all the audience who has come here. We really appreciate your presence. And have a good night to everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye. Take care. Thank you, Amanda. Good job.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.